from what I noticed, I think 2022, end of 2022, maybe early 2023, we did have a smaller stop by a bit. We did have like a 50 to 70 pip range stop. And then by as the year went by, our stops got a little bigger. So it went from, I think, having a 30 pip stop to a 70 pip stop to like 110 average pip stop. Now, I'll show you guys why, because a lot of it has to do with liquidity. A lot of times, like you'll be in a situation like this where, for instance, you have a range form here, right? And then you have, let's say, like some type of, you know what? Let me just do this. You have like, let's say this, for instance, right? I'm like, forget me finding an example. Let me just draw out the whole scenario for you guys. Right. So in this case, right, I'll have something like this, right? And usually what I'll do is I'll be like, okay, cool. You know, as we close above like this range to left hand side over here, right? Obviously, close above, close below. That's pretty key. You close above, you should continue to drive up. But in this scenario right now, there wouldn't be any liquidity being grabbed. Like there's no liquidity to identify that price is grabbed to drive up, right? So in some cases, I might take a buy here. Like last year or the year prior, I would have taken a buy right here. And I would have had my stop loss maybe below here on this red line here. I would have had my stop below there. I would have had my entry on this green box around here probably. And I would have had my TP wherever, like, you know, anywhere above there. But I'll be in this position. And what I've noticed is that what price would do sometimes is it'll break the lows first and then still continue to drive. But as it breaks the lows, it's still respecting the support you have or the resistance you have at 1976. So 2 years ago, I would have got stopped out. Whereas this year, I understand liquidity now. I understand that, okay, price may be in a situation to maybe come down, break the lows, as long as the bullish is still the structure is still bullish here to drive up. And as long as you don't close anywhere below like 1976, this thing should continue to drive up to retest the highs. So let's say it's a 4-hour candle. 4-hour candle opens up. I take an entry right here, for instance, right? What I'll do is, okay, cool. I'll take an entry there. I have my stops below here. I'll get stopped out 2 years ago. But now if I were to put my stops below like the 5-minute ranges, which is below like 1960, right? I understand that, okay, price could spend the first 2-3 hours coming down and create a bottom wick. The last hour, as long as it closes respecting this yellow line here to our left at 1976, you should be good to drive up towards wherever next. So yeah, that's kind of why I adjusted my stops over the years. I just noticed that I'll get stopped out quite often using previous candle highs, previous candle lows. And yes, the stops might be smaller, but it would affect my psychology and trading in general. Like obviously the more losses you have, the more you have the urge to make things back or revenge those stops, right? So I'm like, okay, well, what if I just have my stops at a point where I understand that, okay, if price were to break that lower high, the trade's gone. There's no need to hold that trade or mirror that trade afterwards, right? But I understand that that is a very heavy structure point where for a fact, it's not going to come back to my original entry. So that's kind of where I have it now. I just have it, let's say I were to have a position right here for like buys, for instance. Right? I'll put my stop maybe like below, let's see, like let's say below here, for instance, right? Because I understand, okay, cool. To the left-hand side, if I were to break below this wick here, looking left, you may be coming back into this range to the left-hand side here. And therefore, you'll be making your way down towards like 1908 instead, right? So there's no need to have a stop bigger than that. But the chances I'm taking is that as long as price, let's say, respects the support here and it doesn't close below, it can do something like this for all I know, right? The trade's still valid. So my chance, the only thing I'm looking at really is like clean traffic to the left to determine my stops. So for instance, I'll put my stop like here. I understand that every time you break below there, you'll be able to drop down towards here. So that's a stop loss that I'll be comfortable with, because one, it's wide enough to a point where that's a break of structure, and two, there's no going back once you break that low. So that's how I identify my stops now.